So communication stuff. I lived in Houston, Texas for a good long while. And Houston, at least at the time, I don't know about now, but Houston at the time was definitely more of a Texas city than Dallas was. It was definitely more of a, just had that, a lot of people that were born in Houston. Austin used to be that way. San Antonio used to be that way. Austin's become kind of like the new Dallas, really, in a lot of ways, so less Texans there. But one of the most refreshing things about Texans, native Texans, is that when they tell you the deal's really the deal. Like there's no like not making it clear what they really feel and what they really think, right? Like it's almost always very direct, and like I never was in sales when I was in Houston, but I kind of wish I would have been, because I think it would have been a, kind of a refreshing experience. But then when I moved to Charlotte, everything changed. Like I was used to having church meetings at that time where you had the meeting for a couple hours, you decided what you were going to do, and then you did it. And everybody was clear on who had decided what, at that meeting. Then I moved to Charlotte. The first thing that happened when I moved to Charlotte was, and this isn't true now, but back in the day, was when I pulled up to a Wendy's to order an unsweet tea, they were like, "We don't have unsweet tea." I mean, I should have known then that I was in trouble. But so what I learned, though, was when I started to have church meetings there, the church meeting, which was on Wednesday night, even though we had agreed to 4 or 5 things on that night, we really hadn't agreed on them because they were still going to be talked about and redecided either out in the parking lot or at somebody's house or 2 days later. So the whole thing about the conversational style in the Southeast was much more indirect than what I was used to in Houston. And I'm going to get into some how that plays into what we're talking about tonight here in a minute. But it's kind of like if you ask somebody in Houston, where do you want to go eat? They're going to go, my favorite barbecue place or Mexican or whatever it is, or go get a steak or whatever. If you say that, when I moved to Charlotte, you go, where would you like to go eat? Where would you like to go eat? And I thought, God, that's so pleasant. I mean, like, I can't believe that they're asking like that, but it's like, the thing I realized after a while is they were only asking me that to figure out how to go where they wanted to go in spite of where I wanted to go. Are you following me? They were just like testing it out to know what to object to in a nice, bless your heart kind of a way, right? That's kind of what I learned. But it honestly took me a while to adjust to life in the Southeast after I spent all that time, a fairly long time in Texas. One of the things about the way we have conversations with each other, and I think more importantly, the way we hear conversations with each other, and we're getting into all this because I know that one of the 3 things that trigger all of us and challenge our recovery and our sobriety and our serenity are people, places, and things. Amen? Everyone seems to do really well, or not everyone, but a lot of people seem to do really well when they're like in inpatient treatment, or they seem like they are, right? And then they just cannot wait to get home. They just cannot wait to get back to work. Well, what happens when I get home? Well, I'm really not ready to know what to do with the conversations I'm going to have. I'm really not ready to know what to do with the people that are going to be in front of me. I'm really not ready to know what to do with the people that agitated me at work while I was getting high, and now I'm not. And now if they agitated me while I was getting high, or I was at home and the people at home agitated me while I was using, they're really going to agitate me now. Amen? I mean, like, I'm coming home sober, they're really going to agitate me, which is why I'm kind of like, maybe it's a good idea to think about sober living. Kind of move your way slowly but surely back into those relationships, because people do baffle us. Amen? Like, how many of you guys have somebody right now in your life that every time you're with them, you dread getting with them before you meet them? Not saying you don't like them, but you kind of dread being with them. You feel like you're never going to be able to satisfy them. You know anybody like this? They're always going to somehow agitate you. You're never, if you're going to, you know this person because if you're going to meetings, Al-Anon, AA, NA, and let's say 2 out of 4 weeks, you're bringing up this person, that would be the one. Amen? That would be the one. In a lot of cases, it's the person who has the highest expectations of you that you can never meet, but by God, you're going to try. You know, we talked about expectations last week, but there's always going to be someone in our life who really sort of gets under our skin. And what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do with this talk tonight is get into some of that, and then we'll work harder next week on what to do. We're just not going to leave it on tonight, but our core beliefs have a lot to do with the way we talk about things and the way we hear things from others. If my core belief is that everybody all the time ought to defer to everybody else, well, then that's going to influence the way I see things. Like I did some graduate work one time in Minnesota, at this seminary in Minnesota. So it's Lutheran seminary. So like one of the things I did not really think through very well was if I was going to keep going to Minnesota, they had on the schedule, you had to go 4 times a year. Well, that means one of those 4 times was going to be in January. And the first time I ever went up there in January, like I'm like thinking they're having some kind of, their idea of fun was having an ice design event. I should have known it was going to be bad, but then I was asking some guy that lived there, I'm like, let me ask you a question. How come all the people that run here, because I ran, but I was for sure not going to run when it was 9 degrees or whatever it was. It was colder than that. I'm like, why do these people wear these masks and these little things on their hip? He goes, well, what they're doing is they're having to heat up their air, so they can breathe it. So I'm thinking it's a joke. So I go, well, what would happen if they didn't breathe air out of that mask? He goes, well, they would burn their lungs. I'm thinking right then, I know this place, there's a lot of Lutherans here, but God is not a fan of Minnesota. Why? Why would he do that to people? But our core beliefs do influence the way we interpret other people. Does that make sense? And if they don't share our core beliefs about life and relationships, and even the way we talk to each other, well, there's probably going to be a struggle that's going to come our way. So they do influence us. You're going to see that schemas do the same thing. Talk about that some more in the next week or so. But here's the deal. Core beliefs are basic beliefs about ourselves, other people, and the world we live in. They are things we hold to be absolute truths deep down underneath all of our surface thoughts. Essentially, core beliefs determine how you perceive and interpret the world. I like this line. They sit in the basement of your mind. They sit in the basement of the way you think. They're always there. They're always a part of you, and you're not even aware of how they're influencing you, but that's what's happening. Schemas we'll talk about more, but they are really life narratives. We've taught those before. I'm going to get into the basic ones next week probably, and you will see how they influence the way you are in terms of the way you communicate as well. So there are 4 basic communication styles that we use. If there are more like sub ones, fine, but they all key off of these 4. So here's the first one. You're going to be thinking right now that maybe it's a good time to slap the person you're with when you hit the one that they're like. I would really encourage you not to do that. Tonight's talk is not a diagnostic about your friend, your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your dad, or anybody else where you can put your finger in their face and go, I told you you were like that. That's really not what we're doing. We're trying to learn about each other in such a way that we can diffuse the triggers that are evident when we start to deal with people that, are not like us. Does that make sense? So here's the first one. Passive communication. It is a style in which individuals have developed a pattern of avoiding, this is a bunch of us, avoiding expressing their opinions or feelings, protecting their rights, and identifying and meeting their needs. You know, I used to do the spirituality groups for outpatient stuff at Cornerstone for a long time. And I mean, for every 10 people that would talk about stuff in a group for the first couple weeks, there were 100 that would not. You know, and you could like see the number of people in the room that were really passive communicators. And you could see where they were good. People that are passive communicators are also good or they believe they're good at eating their feelings. You know anybody like that? Anybody know anything about that? Good at eating their feelings. But the problem is, after a while, which is what you learn in recovery, after a while, what do you learn? You learn that your feelings will eat you. Amen? You learn that your feelings can eat you. So they developed a pattern of avoiding expressing their opinions or feelings, protecting their rights, and identifying and meeting their needs in a way that nobody's going to be disturbed. As a result, passive individuals do not respond overtly to hurtful or anger-inducing situations. They don't do things directly. Instead, they allow grievances and annoyances to mount, usually, now get this, usually unaware of the fact that this is building up. But once they have reached their high tolerance threshold for unacceptable behavior, they are prone to explosive outbursts, which are usually out of proportion, now get that, usually out of proportion to the triggering incident. After the outburst, however, the person is probably going to feel shame, guilt, and confusion, so they return to doing what? Being passive. So let's just say your mom is a passive person. And let's just say it's Thanksgiving dinner. And let's just say your mom is doing just fine all during Thanksgiving dinner, right? And everybody gets what they want and everybody's happy and we've had a good conversation and all that. But somewhere along the way, your mother is disturbed at your dad. And the reason she's disturbed at your dad is because your dad got the wrong kind of cranberry sauce at the Ingles. He got the wrong stuff. She didn't say anything because she's passive. She didn't tell your dad to go get the right stuff. She didn't go get in the car and get the right stuff. She just let it build up. And then somebody else brought the wrong kind of whipped cream for the pumpkin pie that she made, right? She didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. She just let it build up. And then, being a good passive person, she was doing all the dishes. And so she had put the last dish in the dishwasher. And in you come, God help you, with your pie plate. Because you were watching what is also bad football, the Detroit Lions, and God knows who. Why are they on there? We don't know, right? They ought to be banned. That's awful. So there you're watching that god-awful game. You've fallen asleep because of it. You woke up with your pie plate. You take it into the kitchen, and you give it to your mom, and your mom loses her freaking mind. She takes the plate, throws it on the ground, breaks it, says a few things to you, and recovers 35 seconds later like she's the church lady and says, and that's just fine. It's all fine now. And you are terrified, right? That's what happens. That's what happens with a passive person. So they just don't do well asserting for themselves. They allow other people to deliberately or inadvertently sort of step on them, infringe on their rights. They don't express their feelings well. They speak softly or apologetically. You know anybody like this so far? Don't raise your hand if you do. I'm saving you. I'm telling you. So they speak softly or apologetically. They do poorly with direct eye-to-eye contact, and they probably have some kind of a slumped body posture. They're anxious. They get depressed because they feel stuck. They're resentful, but they aren't necessarily aware of it because their needs aren't being met. They often feel confused because they ignore their own feelings. They're unable to mature because real issues are never addressed. Lots of pain there. Lots of pain in that communication style. We're going to talk about alternatives here in a minute tonight, but lots of pain in that. So here's another communication style. If this is your base style, for you, the next one I'm going to talk about, a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun. Doesn't get better results, but it might be a lot more fun. Aggressive communication is a style in which individuals express their feelings and opinions and advocate for their needs in a way that violates the rights of others. Thus, aggressive communicators are verbally and or even physically abusive. They try to dominate others, use humiliation to control other people. You know anybody like this? Criticize, blame, or attack, very impulsive, have low frustration tolerance, speak in a loud, demanding, and overbearing voice, act threateningly and rudely, don't listen well, interrupt a lot, use you statements with probably the finger like that, have an overbearing or intimidating posture. Whoo-hoo. Passive-aggressive communication is a style that is probably the most troubling. Every one of these styles have their own things going on. What we're going to do last is obviously a much more positive communication style, which, by the way, is definitely learnable. Passive aggression may be, of what we're going to talk about tonight, the most difficult style to be able to understand and to be able to deal with. May cause the highest level of frustration, really, for both people involved. It is a style in which individuals appear passive on the surface, like they are kind of like, the bless your heart, everything's fine. Whatever you think is best, whatever you would like to do, wherever you would like to go eat, wherever you would like to go to the movie. But the thing is, here's like kind of an example. So you say, I want to go see the new, I would like to go see the new Star Wars movie, or I don't know whatever, right? So you pick that. And he says, or she says, well, that's fine. Let's go there. The next thing you know is you're halfway to the movie and he's looking up on his phone or she's looking up on her phone where you're going to go see the movie. And they say to you, we're going to basically barely be able to get to that movie on time. And that movie is, for some reason, because they've already known this, that movie is like $6 more than this movie over here. Well, if you want to go see Star Wars, you ready? That's fine. But we could go over and see this other movie. Like we have an extra 15 minutes to get there, and it's cheaper. Just saying. You know anybody like that? Have you ever met anybody like that? Passive-aggressive people are indirect, subtle, and they're behind the scenes. They develop a pattern of passive-aggressive communication, and because of it, and because they somehow believe it protects them, they normally feel powerless, stuck, and develop significant resentments. In other words, they feel incapable of dealing directly with the object of their resentments. Instead, they express their anger by subtly undermining the object, real or imagined, of their resentments. For example, in a work setting, anybody here, do any of you guys manage people? Or have you ever managed people? Okay, so there are some people that when you manage them, you have a team meeting, and you go through a list of responsibilities that each team member is supposed to work on, right? And you go, we got this much work to get done today. Can you do this part A, B, C, and D? You go, yes. If you're passive-aggressive, you'll agree to anything and everything, all the time. But what's going to happen is if you're the manager, what are you going to notice? You're going to notice that Jack never quite seems to be able to get it done, right? You're going to notice that Jack always has a reason, but Jack never seems to be able to quite get it done. You're going to send Jack, if it's a situation where you're going to send Jack to the store for canned peas, Jack is going to go to the Ingalls, and Jack is going to come back with black beans. And Jack's going to say, it was the weirdest thing. Ingalls, they didn't have any peas. Now, what are the odds of Ingalls not having peas? unless it's National Pee Day or something, not very good, right? I mean, they're not very good. There are not that many pea eaters in the world to make a run on the Ingalls where there are no peas in a can or frozen, right? But he comes back and that's what he has to say. So what you're going to see in this pattern is the person's going to agree to anything but doesn't feel any kind of consternation about fulfilling, much less. And there's always going to be a reason. And it's sort of going to be like it's going to look kind of like a rebellion, because really that's kind of what it is. Are you following me? Because that's the way the zap is coming in. The zap is coming in by me agreeing to anything you want to do, but really having no intention of doing it. And instead of just saying, you know what, no, I mean, good, healthy boundaries, no, I'm really not, I really don't see I'm not going to be doing that. That isn't something I really want to do. In which case, in a work setting, it's much clearer for the manager, because the manager can say, look, either I need to reassign you to another role, or this isn't a good company for you to work for because we aren't able to get done what we have to get done with you. So, hope you can find a better job that you're more enamored with somewhere else. You're going to find that people that are passive-aggressive mutter to themselves rather than confront the person or the issue. They are the person that always has something under their breath to say. You know anybody like this? Under their breath to say after they agree to whatever it is you're talking about. So you think what's going on is clear, and it's clear to you, but it doesn't mean that because it's clear to you that they're agreeing to it. They would rather do that than confront the issue. They're probably going to be sarcastic. They're probably going to have difficulty acknowledging the fact that they're even angry. Here's a big one. They're going to use facial expressions that don't match how they feel. Have you ever seen that in somebody? They are going to smile at you while you get this weird feeling that they're really, really mad. You ever had that experience? You get the intense feeling that this person's really upset about this, but they're smiling going, that's just fine. And you can't get the match. Like, it doesn't seem like it matches up, and it's a little bit disturbing. They're going to deny that there's a problem when there's a problem. They're going to appear cooperative while purposefully doing things to annoy and disrupt. The passive-aggressive communicator is going to say, believe or behave like, I'm really weak and I'm resentful, so what I'm going to do is sabotage, frustrate, and disrupt. The impact of someone who's passive-aggressive is that these individuals are going to become alienated from people around them and remain stuck in a position of feeling powerless. That is a hard place to be. That is a hard kind of a relationship to be in. You are going to need to know as much as you possibly can about boundaries in order to be okay with the person that really has that as their base communication style. Go buy the book Boundaries. We have it in our office. Get it online. When we teach the class, take the class. Do everything you can to understand boundaries. And remember that when we teach boundaries, we're not teaching you how to have an effective outcome with somebody else, because their feelings are going to be their feelings. We're teaching you how to do a better job taking care of yourself and being clear. The last communication style I want to get into is the healthiest. Assertive communication is a style which individuals clearly state their opinions and feelings and firmly advocate for their rights and needs without violating the rights of others. Now, if your communication style is that you're passive, when someone speaks to you in an assertive way, you may believe that what they're doing is aggressive. You may believe that that is what is happening. Someone who's assertive may come off as being aggressive if the only way you're used to communicating with people is in a passive way. Assertive individuals value themselves, their time and their emotions. Spiritual and physical needs are strong advocates for themselves while being very respectful of the rights of others. Assertive communicators will state needs and wants clearly, appropriately and respectfully. Express feelings clearly, appropriately, and respectfully. Use I, not you statements. Communicate respect for others. Listen well without interrupting. Feel in control of self. Have good eye contact. Speak in a relaxed and clear tone of voice. Have a relaxed body posture. Feel connected to others. And feel competent and in control. Not allow others to abuse or manipulate them, and stand up for their rights. You're like, I don't know how many people I know that are like that. And again, I want to say it again. When you see somebody communicating with you like that, if your base style is that you're much more passive, you're going to feel pushed by them, and your initial response to them is you're going to feel like they're bossy. You're going to feel like they're too direct. You're going to feel like they're too demanding, like they're too harsh. You know, people all the time tell me this about relationships they have the first time they meet a therapist. You know, maybe one that works at our counseling center, one that I recommend. They go, I went and saw her. I mean, I just felt like she was very bossy. And I mean, in the case of some of our therapists, I go, well, you're right. You're right. No, but the thing is, what they're used to not hearing is, they're not used to hearing someone simply tell them the truth. They're not used to someone simply level with them without any other kind of an agenda. They're not used to someone being straightforward. And if you're much more passively inclined, that's going to be a struggle for you. Let me tell you someone that was really good at assertive behavior. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When Jesus was 12 years old, they attended the festival as usual. After the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth, but Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't miss him at first because they assumed he was with everybody else. But when he didn't show up that evening, they started looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they couldn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to search for him there. 3 days later, they finally discovered him in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking questions. All who heard Jesus were amazed at his understanding and his answers. Here's the part. His parents didn't know what to think. Son, his mother said to him, why have you done this to us? What's her communication style? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere. Jesus, why did you need to search? Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house? But they didn't understand what he meant. Then he returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And his mother stored all these things about Jesus' demeanor, about his communication style, about his assertiveness in her heart. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and all the people. Assertive communication is like, for most people, it is absolutely a learned piece of recovery that comes along with what we do here. Most of us don't come into this rooms aware of how to do that. We just don't. Most people, that's not their natural style. It's likely going to be one of the first three. But I do hope you'll come back next week as we work on this some more. We'll talk a lot more about solutions, taking time out, a bunch of other stuff that is really going to help you deal with these communication styles. We're going to open up the space in front of me for prayer tonight. I don't know what's on your heart that you have on there that needs to get to God, but it's probably something. Don't be afraid to do that. If you want to talk to somebody after worship tonight, more about what we're talking about here, go and talk to somebody right in these care rooms, right out this door. Thank you so much for being here. In Jesus' sweet name, amen.